Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Business and Life Stories with James and Mike. I'm Mike. He's James. Together, we have one complete brain between the two of us, and that's why our business works well. This week, we're joined by Lucia Csoma, founder of Lucia Csoma Coaching. She has over 20 years experience in coaching, mentoring, and advising people in business, not just somebody that just started off this. She's got quite a bit of background. She's been on other shows before. If you've been paying attention on LinkedIn, she's had a lot of good things to say. And I'm super excited that she actually said yes to being on our show today. Welcome, Lucia.
Welcome.
Very nice to be on this show, Mike and James. Excited to be here.
You've been in the States, you said 19 years, and you came from Romania. And today's topic was overcoming fear. So my first question is, was it a little scary changing countries?
No, it was a piece of cake. Next question. Yes, it was definitely scary, especially that when I came, my English was not at the business level. So I was in conversations where I didn't have any idea about the topics that was discussed. And I think that with other fears, you're in a different country, don't know the culture, you're trying to make connections, meet people, but with the language barriers, it was a little bit intimidating at first.
So what were some things that you learned from that experience that helped you or helping you now in your coaching? Like, what lessons did you learn about dealing with fear?
One lesson that I learned is that first, the people that I got introduced were very supportive on my language. So I've learned to ask questions without hesitation. I wasn't embarrassed to ask the obvious question. What does that means? I didn't know some basics, like I'm looking sometimes in my notes of words that I didn't know what it means. They were some basic words that I had no idea what it means. And just constantly asking and seeing that people responded nicely with that. It's not that they were thinking I'm stupid or that I'm incapable or any negative thinking that I would come up with. There was none of that. They were just supporting. And that started translating into other areas. I started being bold even after already I was pretty good at English. That tendency to ask when I don't know something stayed. And it helped me a lot to grow professionally. I've learned a lot. So I would be at parties and someone would tell me that they're doing something that I never heard before. And I would just ask, oh, tell me more about it. I never heard of it. What is that? No embarrassment in that. And I've learned so much. Like, people are so good at teaching you, and just asking a lot of questions was a wonderful way for me to learn language, learn other domains, learn everything, and just ask questions.
And then when you started your corporate career, when did you first discover you had a gift and a real interest in helping mentor and guide people?
Yeah, I started my career in my early 20s at a manufacturing company. The company had 18 people, and those people were crazy enough to trust me to grow their company. And in half a year of working there, they promoted me to run their operations. So I was the CEO for Romania and was in charge to grow the company to over 100 employees. And during that process, so I had to learn operations, but I had to also learn people skills. I had to hire those people, and I had to make sure that the people that I hire will be able to deliver on what we were supposed to deliver. We had wonderful clients, like big names like Chanel, Versace, Boucheron, that if we would not deliver on time, we would lose them. And I had to use all the skills that I could find to hire people to make sure that they stay with us and they don't leave us when we need to load the truck with merchandise. And that's when I discovered personal development. And I realized that one-on-one connections are very important. Personal development for me, I started reading Zig Ziglar's books. And yeah, they're old, but super good. The basics, I got them from there. And the element of connecting with people and connecting at their level, meeting them where they are, I think that's what supported me to be able to grow the company and be able to keep it successful until I came to US.
When you got to US, did you notice a big difference between the way companies run between there or between here and Romania? Did you have to make a shift in the way that you were helping people develop, or was it the same kind of thing?
I think here I found that people were more open to personal development. I felt like the idea of receiving feedback, asking for feedback was important. The idea of a one-on-one was something that I was not necessarily introduced officially. I was kind of doing it here and there, but only here I've learned the structure of a one-on-one, of not just being willing to be a good leader, but actually taking strategic actions to meet with your team all the time, get curious about them, not just at the professional level, get at a deeper connection, make a deeper connection with them. I think that was a big difference from here to there.
And developing those deeper connections, does that help your team to have more confidence and less fear in pursuing the job?
I believe that developing those relationships help them understand really what's the role. I believe that there is a lot of confusion in a workplace where people don't know exactly what is required from them. And meeting with people on a regular basis, making sure that that connection, it's always open, it's always at the same level, on level, not top down. I think that helps them understand what it is required, what do they need to do in order to be successful, and help them know when they got there.
So you've really developed a great history of corporate accomplishments. I mean, anybody that looks at your LinkedIn can see that all this cool stuff and your prior shows you've been on and things. With all that, what do you think most early stage companies, founders and sales directors and people like this, what do you think their biggest fears are? Do you see any common thread?
Yes, there are many, but one common thread, especially in the early ages, is to take action when they feel like their self-esteem is threatened. And I'm talking early stages. When later on, other fears come in. But at the very beginning, is just taking that action that puts them into a vulnerable place, a place that they've never been before. And that triggers in them the feeling that their self-worth, their self-esteem, their who they thought that they were can be threatened in any way. I believe that is one of the first fears that they are introduced. And that happens even with people that were successful in their corporate jobs. But when they shift to selling for themselves, when they shift to making connection for their own benefit, for their own company, somehow that fear gets triggered. And the people that can work around that can acknowledge and take action regardless of that fear, those are the people that succeed, and also succeed faster.
And then what is it, do you think, that causes the fear, really? So the fear is, or maybe describe it better for us. Is the fear of someone, like if I'm the founder of a company, is the fear that if I take this action, it might be wrong? Is the fear of being wrong, or is it a fear of failing? What is the driver of the fear?
The fear of failing, I think we always have it, but I think it goes to the definition, what is failing? And often at an early stage, I see that it's not the fear of failing the company. It's more the fear of failing as an individual. Being on a sales call and the sales call it doesn't go as well as they were hoping for. It's not the fear of the company, because they know that from one specific call does not dictate the success of the failure of the company. But oftentimes that unexpected negative outcome of a call that plays into the fear that person feel like they failed as an individual, that they are an imposter at times, that they are not who they thought they were, or if they move from a corporate to their own practice, they might think after if they do not have the name of a big corporate to back up their credentials, their credibility, then they might feel like they are an imposter. They cannot succeed on their own. So it is failure, but it's more failure as a person, not necessarily failure at the company level.
How do you walk with someone like that? How do you help them to, like your clients, how do you help them to take action? Do you just rely on your past experience in corporate, or have you developed additional tools beyond that?
What I believe that it's important is to understand what is the definition, what is the fear for that specific individual, and then see like what got them stuck in that place of fear, in the place of inaction, and finding things that are custom to them to get them unstuck and take action. I don't believe that we are in lack of information in order to, so we can go online and see, hey, how to overcome the fear of
sales calls.
Yes, and you will find a blueprint that worked for a lot of people. Like a lot of people were very successful by following that. The problem is that although we are very similar, we are not coming with the same baggages. Like we might experience the same fear, but the root of that fear, or it's not necessarily the same, and the solution, it's not necessarily the same. So I am more into understanding first what is the block, and then finding ways that are specific to their use cases, to their situation, that would help them overcome this fear or start taking action regardless. And there are some basics that you can do. So questioning the fear, questioning the validity of the fear. Oftentimes when we are fearful, we think black and white. Like, if I get on this call, I will get the $1 million contract, or I'm going to become a homeless if they say no. And those are two scenarios that our mind brings to our attention. But questioning that and understand, hey, what is the worst case scenario, and how will you deal if that were to happen? Then what is the best scenario, and what would that be? And most often we land on, and what is most likely that would happen? And just dealing with those questions, just not letting fear overpower us, but just putting in front of us and ask some questions. Those are some things that typically can get the person moving in the direction and understanding that there's not that much that they can lose if they get to know they're actually not going to be a homeless. But even if they will become a homeless, they see that there is a solution. They can still cope with that, and they will be, in the end, well.
James has that look. He's got a question.
I think what's really come out in the conversation was the importance of asking questions, either to others or ourselves internally, and obviously this your story started with immigrating to the States and having to ask questions to understand, hey, I'm not clear on this word, or where can I go for this or that. And I feel that that really illustrates a great point, and it's something that I live by as well. It's sort of putting yourself into a situation which doesn't feel comfortable, but you have to do what you don't really want to sort of get out of that situation. So it's like, if you move to a different country with a different language, you kind of have to ask questions, right? I mean, you either stay isolated, or if you want to meet people, find a job, etc., one has to put oneself out in that rather vulnerable kind of precipice of asking what one might think as fairly basic questions, but are really important questions. And I think that's just so important, because from my idea as a coach, it's and I'm sure that, and I hope, or I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are. But for me, part of coaching is about asking questions. Right? It's not really me telling them, because for me, everyone has it within ourselves to do what we want to, but it's how do we bring that out? And that's like, as you said, it's finding those internal blocks, isn't it? Through asking questions.
Yes, I think you're totally right, James. That's exactly my philosophy of coaching, that the answer lays within us. It's just that we very rarely offer ourselves the opportunity to think through our thoughts, even the opportunity to think. Oftentimes, I would find myself being bombarded by thoughts, by situations, and I would think, I didn't even process this. I don't even know how to process that. And with questions, we unlock the thinking, and we start seeing things that maybe we have not even considered before. And yes, I believe in the power of open-ended questions. I think they are powerful, and that's my definition of coaching. That's not to say that the coach cannot come with some tools that work for most of the people, but I would say 80% of what a coach should do is just get curious and allow their client to think about their thinking.
People always think I'm completely nuts when I mention this, but I didn't have a phone for over a month, and hey, I survived it. My kids survived. The world survived. It was no big deal. I obviously got severe withdrawal symptoms in the first 24 hours, but after that, and there was a purpose for this story, after that, I realized that it gave me more time to think and to reflect. Mm-hmm. And it's always been the same. It was newspapers, it was radios, it was TVs, it's phones and social media now. But what is it about humans, or why are we're so easily distracted, and kind of we almost build our own bombardments into our own lives? We sort of want to be bombarded, so we're super busy, so we haven't got the 10 minutes a day to self-reflect. It's a really interesting phenomena, isn't it, that if we just all allowed ourselves 10 minutes to self-reflect, then we could probably change our lives. is this something which you work with your clients, and how important is it for small business owners to just take that little bit of time every day, just put the phones down, the wife or husband's fine, the kids are fine, the employees are fine. I need this time for myself to ask, to reflect, to ask internal questions. How can I solve such and such a problem? Is that an issue which you kind of go through? Is that and have you got any techniques, some easy ways other than putting your phone down, where people can spend a bit of time and ask those self-reflecting questions to solve problems which they probably already know the answers for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think just to answer your first question about why is it that we're always trying to get distracted, I believe that initially, like, we are essentially interested in productivity. No, we want to solve problems. We are problem solvers as a species. So having a phone, having something to do that gives us an answer really fast, satisfies some of our natural instinct to be productive, to do something. And even if that is maybe not productive, like not necessarily like social media, just scrolling, it's not productive, but I believe that does send our brain the message that we're doing something is happening. We're not getting bored. And I believe that we are afraid to get bored. And I believe it's very important. So what you did with your family, I would be very curious to learn more. But just 1 month without that, I assume you have a lot of learning that came out of that experience.
I did. It was quite painful. It really opened a few doors, and it was. I just gave myself about 20 minutes to reflect, kind of each day. And it was a more painful experience than I imagined. But yeah, I mean, as Michael be the first to say, pain for me is where my growth is. So it was a very growth orientated experience. And I believe that if one can open the doors with simple questions, then the answers are there. So.
And to answer your second. Sorry, Mike, you wanted to say something?
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Yes, to answer your second question, if there are any tools that people can do to be more intentional about self-reflection. I was introduced a few years ago at a conference of something that Jack Welch used to do. And that would be 10 minutes of white space. 10 minutes, a few times a day, where he would just look outside the window and do nothing else. And that was scheduled into his calendar. And everybody knew, his secretary knew, everybody knew that that is the time when Jack just does window glazing. And he said that one of the best ideas that he had came through that practice, when he just allowed his mind to wander. And I believe there is something magical in that, because our mind wanders all the time, but we're too busy to stop and understand what it's wondering about. And it's trying to tell us different things at different times, different messages, but we don't stop to listen. Like it just, like a thought comes, a thought goes, a thought comes, a thought goes, and 5 minutes later we don't know what was the thought, like how many thoughts came, how many thoughts left. And giving ourselves the time to just let our thoughts free can really be a good benefit to our day. And there is an author, her name is Juliet F something. I'm very happy to send you the link to her book, and she called her book White Space, and she talks about this concept, about how important it is to have that time, to incorporate it into the meetings, to end the meetings 5 minutes earlier, and just allow 5 months of not looking at what would be the next what's the next thing on the agenda, and just think. And at times that can be hard, But
Yeah.
one thing that I personally do at times, I leave my phone at home and I go for a walk.
Yeah.
I go for a
Yeah.
half an hour walk. If I have my phone with me, I'm very tempted to note
Yeah.
the wonderful thoughts that come to mind, an action, a call that I need to do, a good thought, a writing idea. But if I do that, immediately I start into productive mode, and it's not necessarily helping my thinking. But if I am diligent to leave my phone at home and go for those 30 minutes, oftentimes I come refreshed, and at times I come with some good ideas. But that refreshed refreshed mind, it's very, I find it very beneficial for me.
Have you found with your clients that using the phone or the computer too much increases their anxiety and fear?
I think that's with all of us. Yes, definitely. I believe, like, you're talking about the phone versus the computer, like answering emails on the phone versus the computer. Yes, definitely. Because we are like, no, we want to use the phone because it feels that it's very very productive, because we can carry it everywhere. We can do it on the couch. We can do it in our backyard. We can do it while we are stopping at a stoplight. No, like, we can always work with it, but we are limited. In my experience, I find myself very limited in how I can, like, even the typing. It's still not as seamless as it is to type on a computer. So I feel like our brain tries to somehow make it work, and it works a little bit harder than how it would work when we would have a designated time when we are at a computer and we're trying to work. At the same time, I find that on smartphone, the task switching happens faster, like more often. So we get a phone call, and then we see a reminder, and then we see a notification, and we get 3 texts, and then someone liked our post, other people, we get a reminder, a calendar, like
There's a lot going on.
there's so much going on, and I believe all that gets us bombarded and gets our poor brain tired.
Definitely. All that turmoil in the mind, I think, in my experience, it makes me tend to get more anxious about making decisions. Whereas if I haven't gone to James's extreme, but if I just leave the phone in another room for several hours and embrace the white noise, things become much more clear.
Yes.
I think, I think it's sort of human evolutionary psychology for us to avoid fear if we can, as a survival mechanism. And I think there's a school of thought that, as you say, keeping busy, keeping distracted, is a way that we can avoid facing up to those fears, right? So I guess, Mike, have you got I could talk about fear for hours, but yes. I guess I will ask what Mike normally asks. What is the best way then for business owners to really allot that time to, and actually not be scared of kind of embracing those fears, or asking questions which open a few doors? Is it as simple as just putting a schedule 10 minutes every day, or are there a few other simple questions or simple kind of actions where a busy business owner can still begin to make steps?
So putting aside those 10 minutes, it's helpful just to let the mind flow, not necessarily to have 10 minutes to address our fears. What I think with fear is that we need to take it when it happens. Like, when it happens, first of all, is just to acknowledge that it's there. just to acknowledge what is here. So acknowledge that the fear is present. So for example, if we're dreading a phone call and we are getting ready for that phone call and we see that our anxiety level goes up, it's just taking a deep breath and just acknowledging, okay, I understand. I see that fear is creeping in. I understand why it's happening, and I'm honoring. It's part of me. It's true. Fear. It's trying to keep me safe. It's trying to have me prepared. It's trying to help me succeed. So I'm first acknowledging that this is what happens. What happens? If that fear continues, then it's worth questioning it a little bit more. What is the validity? Like typically when we have a fear, there is a scenario that it's tied to that fear. Is, if we're taking the example of a phone call, we might believe that we're going to completely make a fool of ourselves on that phone call, and we are fearful for that to happen. And it's good just to ask, okay, so what am I concerned here? Okay, I'm concerned that I might make a fool out of myself. And what is the evidence? Asking, what is the evidence for that to be true? And oftentimes there is no evidence. Or oftentimes we make assumptions about the other person. But every time when we're dealing with assumptions about what they would think, what the other people would think. So I can make assumptions about what you guys think about my role as a guest on this, like my answers. So those are just assumptions. I do not know exactly what you're thinking. So there is no evidence that you might think something that I might guess. So just acknowledging that what we're doing when we're in a fearful mode is just working with assumptions, not facts. Because if we are to turn, okay, what are the facts in here? Oftentimes we don't find validity in that. So those are some simple things that we can have, like an internal dialogue. Okay, I acknowledge you, fear. I know you're a friend. I heard you. I got you. You're good. And then here, if unhelpful thought comes, to understand, is this a fact or it's an assumption? And if it's an assumption, then maybe it's good to find another thought that might be helpful, or just put it aside. Just say, again, as we're talking with the fear, just say, okay, I understand where you are. You have these assumptions, but I'm going to acknowledge that they exist, but I'm going to try to show up how I would love to show up.
Excellent.
And as I mentioned, yes?
No, carry on.
So as I mentioned earlier, that if we see that fear is stubborn, then we can question it a little bit more. As I said, like, what is the worst case scenario? What is the best case scenario? And how we will cope with that? And what is most likely that will happen? And just getting through that, it can put ourselves a little bit at peace that even if the worst scenario were to happen, we're still going to be safe. The lion will not eat us. Typically, we don't deal with that nowadays.
We hope not.
Yes, most of the time it doesn't happen.
This has been a really, really fun interview. So grateful you came on. The links where you guys and girls can contact Lucia are down below the video in the description. Lucia, do you have any final words for the audience?
Just go there, take action, and don't let fear get in the way of your success.
Thank you so much for being here.